Revolution Radio.
Join me on the Brian Rouge Show on Revolution Radio, Eastern Standard Time, every Tuesday night from 6 to 8. We talk about the four most vital things, in my view, affecting all of humanity. Number one is UFOs and aliens and their agenda for the advancement of humanity. Number two is the Jewish establishment's control over all aspects of human civilization. Number three, the truth about Adolf Hitler, how he was the opposite of what we've been told. Number four is advanced ancient global civilizations. Join me on the Brian Rouge Show, Tuesday nights from 6 to 8 on Studio B on Revolution Radio.
Travels to Earth through the rainbow crystal bubbles from the furthest reaches of space and time, across the dimensions through the elements, and in harmony with the colors of the universe. Through her mastery of abstract stream of consciousness malapropisms, she weaves a web of comic, satiric, cosmic conversation. Her subjects can range from Norman, the goose next door, to astrology and earth changes, and into the deep recesses of the soul matrix. She holds a wealth of knowledge on herbs, plants, and astrology. Join Mona and her guests on adventures of a feral hippie as she touches the earthly radio waves 5 days a week at 2 p.m. Monday to Friday on Studio B at Revolution Radio.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically atomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday at 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. The heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
And welcome to Cosmic Catastrophes. I'm your guest host, Ransom Godwin. And Diamond and Leah are at the 34th annual Crestone Energy Fair. Is why I'm filling in. I think I was here last time they went to Prestone, but you should check them out on YouTube. And hold on, let me mute this. Check them out YouTube, and also check out Magnetic Reversal News on the YouTube channel, and you'll catch Diamond's replays of some of the greatest shows I've seen on YouTube lately, covering all kinds of topics in the cosmic catastrophe realm. But today I was going to talk about, a couple things, and then we'll get to disasters if we have enough time. But first, let's thank Revolution Radio for allowing us to get on and have free speech, uncensored Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps and truth breaks the spell. Sweet. Let me put this article up for you guys that are watching on YouTube, and you can read along with me in case I stutter. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and take my reading comprehension and stutter medication right now. There we go. There we go. So here we go. First off, I want to read this article from the Free Press, which I think is really to the heart of what's wrong and what's going on. I guess what's wrong and also what's right about America, free speech, and our inalienable rights. And this is from a perspective of a migrant who moved here. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it. The government censored me and other scientists. We fought back and we won. Last week, a federal appeals court confirmed that science cannot function without free speech. Dr. J, and I'm not going to, let me see if I can butcher his name, Batak Charaya, probably not the way you say it. But anyway, here we go. When I was 4, my mother took me first for my first flight and first trip out of her native India into the U.S. with me and my younger brother in tow. We were going to meet my father, an electrical engineer and rocket scientist by training, who had won the U.S. visa lottery in 1970. He had money. Oh, excuse me. Hold on. He had no money, probably. He had moved to New York a year earlier. By that time he arrived, by the time that we arrived, he was working at McDonald's because engineering jobs had dried up during the recession. Both of my parents, children of the violent partition, which is, let me get off into that a little bit to give you some perspective on what the Great Partition was. It was a horrible time shortly after, or right before the end of, bad times all around the world, right after World War II in August of 1947, when after 300 years, British had finally left. They left the subcontinent, and it was partitioned into 2 independent states, a Hindu majority India and a Muslim majority Pakistan. But right after Britain left, immediately there, began to be problems from the clashing cultures there. And they call this the Great Partition. The Hindu majority India and the Muslim majority Pakistan, immediately there began one of the greatest migrations in human history, as millions of Muslims trekked west and east to, they trekked to West and East Pakistan, that later known as Bangladesh, while millions of Hindus and Sikhs headed the opposite direction. Many hundreds of thousands never made it to their destination. Across the Indian subcontinent, communities that had coexisted for almost a millennia attacked each other in a terrifying outbreak of sectarian violence, with Hindus and Sikhs on one side and Muslims on the other. A mutual genocide as unexpected as it was unappreciated. In Punjab and Bengal, provinces in India, borders with West and East Pakistan, respectively, the carnage was especially intense, with massacres, arson, forced conversions, mass abductions, savage sexual violence. Some 75,000 women were raped, and many of them were disfigured and dismembered. You know, this portion of the history, some people call it the Great Divide, because there was gangs of killers that were set loose on whole villages. They would set them on fire, hacking to death the men and children, and the age of young women. They were carried off to be raped. Some British soldiers and journalists who had witnessed the Nazi death camps even proclaimed that partition's brutalities were even worse. Pregnant women had their breasts cut off and babies hacked out of their bellies. Infants were found literally roasted on spits. By 1948, the Great Migration drew to a close. But that gives you some perspective of where this guy's parents came from and why they came to the United States out of that horror. What a horrific thing. But anyway, so both of his parents, children of the violent partition in India and East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, had grown up in poverty. My mother in Calcutta slums. They immigrated to this country because they believed in the American dream, that belief that led success, the belief that success my father ultimately found as an engineer and my mother found running a family daycare business. Our family had indeed won the lottery, but coming to America meant something more profound than a financial opportunity. I remember in 1975 when a high court found that then Prime Minister of India, Gandhi, is that his name? Indira Gandhi, had interfered unlawfully in an election. The ruling disqualified her from holding office. In response, she declared that the state of emergency suspended democracies, censored the opposition press, and government critics, and threw her political opponents in jail. Does this sound familiar? I mean, I don't know. It really does sound familiar to me. But I digress. I remember the shock of those events of our family's collective relief that we were in the U.S., where it was unimaginable that such things could happen. When I was 19, I became an American citizen. I was one of the happiest days of my young life. The immigration officer gave me a civics test, including questions about the First Amendment. It was an easy test because I knew in my heart the American civic religion has the right to free speech as the core. I never imagined that there would come a time when American governments would think of violating this right, or that I would be its target. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, the American government violated my free speech rights and those of my scientist colleagues for questioning the federal government's pandemic policies. My parent had taught me that people here could criticize the government, even over matters of life and death, without worry that the government would censor or suppress us. But over the past 3 years, I have been robbed of that conviction. American government officials working in concert with big tech companies have attacked and suppressed my speech and that of my colleagues for criticizing official pandemic policies, criticism that has been proven persistent. On Friday, at long last, the Fifth Circuit Court ruled that we were not imagining it, that the Biden administration did indeed strong-arm social media companies into doing its bidding. The court found that Biden White House, the CDC, the U.S. Surgeon General's office, and the FBI engaged in years-long pressure campaign on social media outlets designed to ensure that censorship aligned with government's preferred viewpoints. The judges described a pattern of government officials making threats of fundamental reforms like regulatory changes and increased enforcement actions if we did not comply. The implication was clear. To paraphrase Al Capone, nice company you have there. It'd be a shame if something were to happen to it. It worked. According to the judges, the officials' campaign succeeded. The platforms, in capitulation with the state-sponsored pressure, changed their moderation policies. And, some of us, like yours truly, not being a scientist at all, but just somebody reading articles on the internet, have found that, YouTube and other platforms really don't like what I have to say or my opinions also. So this is something that all of us, every single American, should be, paying attention to and participating in their inalienable rights before someone comes along and says that they don't exist. In exposing this behavior and in declaring a likely violation of the First Amendment, the ruling is not just a victory for my fellow scientists and me, but for every single American. The trouble began on October 4th, 2020, when my colleagues and I, Dr. Martin Kuldroff, a professor of medicine at the Harvard University, and Dr. Sinatra Gupta, I hope I said those names right, an epidemiologist at the University of Oxford, published the Great Barrington Declaration. The declaration called for an end to economic lockdowns, school shutdowns, and similarly restrictive policies on the grounds that they were disproportionately harming the youth and economically disadvantaged while conferring limited benefits to society as a whole. The declaration endorsed a focused protection approach that called for strong measures to protect high-risk populations while allowing lower-risk individuals to return to a normal life with reasonable precautions. Tens of thousands of doctors and public health scientists signed our statement. And if you think about that at the time, what did happen? Well, you saw the continuation of box stores, fast food joints, Walmart, things like that, stay open, while mom and pops were forced to close, fined if they opened, and targeted by cities and municipalities across the United States for daring to use their God-given inalienable rights to, pursue happiness, life liberty in the pursuit of happiness. Not guaranteed under the Constitution that you would have happiness, but that you could, strive to get it, that you could pursue it. Now, with hindsight, it's clear that the strategy was the right one. Sweden, which in large part echoed lockdown, and after early problems, embraced focused protection of older populations. Kind of different than over here where we shoved a bunch of people into nursing homes that may or may not may have affected the outcome of everybody living their life. I'll just put it that way. Anyway, they embraced focused protection of older populations, had among the lowest age-adjusted all-cause excess deaths than nearly every other country in Europe, and suffered none of the learning loss for its elementary school children. Similarly, Florida has seen lower cumulative age-adjusted all-cause excess deaths than lockdown-obsessed California since the start of the pandemic. But at the time, a proposal was viewed by the high government officials like Anthony Fauci and some of the Trump White House, including Deborah Birx, I think that's right, Birx, then White House coronavirus response coordinator, as a kind of heresy. Federal officials immediately targeted the Great Barrington Declaration for suppression because it contradicted the government's preferred response to the COVID. For days after declaration publication, then director of the National Institute of Health, Dr. Francis Collins, emailed Fauci to organize a devastating takedown of it. Almost immediately, social media companies such as Google, YouTube, Reddit, and Facebook censored mentions of the declaration. As the Free Press revealed in its Twitter files reporting in 2021, Twitter blacklisted me for posting a link to the Great Barrington Declaration. YouTube censored a video of a public policy roundtable of me with Fauci, Governor Ron DeSantis, for the crime of telling him that scientific evidence for masking children is weak. And, right now, just reading a mainstream article, me, Ransom Godwin, we'll probably get some kind of, violation just for reading this article. Yet at the height of the pandemic, I found myself smeared for my supposed political views, and my views about the policy and the epidemiology were removed from public square on all manner of social networks. I could not believe this was happening in a country I so love. In August 2022, my colleagues and I finally had a chance to fight back. The Missouri and Louisiana Attorney General asked me to join a plaintiff in their case. Represented by the New Civil Liberties Alliance against the Biden administration, the aim of the suit was to end government role in this censorship and restore the free speech rights of all Americans in the digital town square. Lawyers in Missouri versus Biden case deposed representatives under oath from many federal agencies involved in the censorship effort, including Anthony Fauci. Board discovery of email exchanges between the government and social media companies showed that the administration is willing to use its regulatory powers against social media companies that did not comply with censorship demands. The case revealed that dozens of federal agencies, including the CDC and Office of Surgeon General and the Biden White House, pressured social media companies like Google, Facebook, and Twitter to censor and suppress even true speech contradicting federal pandemic priorities. For instance, in 2021, the White House threatened social media companies with damaging regulatory action unless it censored scientists who shared the demonstrable fact that beep, beep did not prevent people from getting the beep. So, that's the world we live in. True or false, if speech is interfered with the government's priorities, it had to go. On Independence Day this year, a federal judge, Terry Daughtry, issued a preliminary injunction in the case, ordering the federal government to immediately stop coercing social media companies to censor protected free speech. In his decision, Justice Doughty? No, there's no R. Doughty? I don't know how you say his name. I am so bad with names. Anyway, Justice compared the administration's censorship infrastructure to an Orwellian ministry of truth. His ruling decried that the vast federal censorship enterprise that dictated who and what social media companies could publish. The government appealed, convinced it should have the power to censor scientific speech. An administrative stay followed and lasted much of the summer. But on Friday, a 3-judge panel of U.S. Court Appeals for the Fifth Circuit unanimously restored a modified version of the preliminary injunction telling the government to stop using social media companies to do its censorship dirty work. Defendants and their employees and agents shall take no actions, formal or informal, directly or indirectly, to coerce or significantly encourage social media companies to remove, delete, suppress, reduce, including through altering their algorithms, posted social media content containing protected free speech. That includes, but not is limited to, compelling the platforms to act, such as by intimidating that some form of punishment will follow a failure to comply with any request, a supervising, a directing, or otherwise meaningful controlling of social media companies' decision-making process. In other words, like the 7 channels, they deleted 420 TV, that's now Mountain High Time, for just simply reading articles and voicing my opinion on things, saying that I believe or don't believe in any specific thing. Do I have to? Is that the new law? That's what we're dealing with here. From the LGBT topic to the scientific topic of global warming and man-made climate change, to what the Constitution means. All of these things have come up in recent times with arguments from those on certain ends of the political spectrum that would say that I shouldn't be able to say things. If they don't agree with it, it's not true. And effectively what they're telling people across the nation is that even though it's not in the Constitution, you will be forced to pretend. You remember that little kid when you were a kid and you went over their house and they wanted to play something, they wanted to play pretend, and they would get mad at you if you didn't pretend with them and, go ahead and say the other kid is He-Man because he identifies as He-Man. Well, that's where we're at as adults now. And a nationwide discussion is, do people have the right to make you pretend with them? Do you have to believe make-believe? Or can you rely on your own deductive logic and critical thinking and traditional knowledge to base what you say and how you feel about things? Anyway, back to the article. As I read the decision, I was overcome with emotion. I think my father, who died when I was 20, would be proud that I played a role in this. I know my mother is. That is because the victory is not just for me, but for every American who felt the oppressive force of this censorship industrial complex during the pandemic. It's a vindication for parents who advocated for some semblance of a normal life for their children, but found their Facebook groups suppressed. It's a vindication for people that are beep, beep patients who sought the company and counsel of fellow patients online, but found themselves gaslit by social media companies and the government into thinking their personal experience of harm was all in their heads. The decision provides some solace for scientists who had deep reservations about lockdowns, but censored themselves for fear of reputational damage that came with being falsely labeled misinformers. They were not wrong in thinking science wasn't working right. Science simply cannot function without free speech. The decision isn't perfect. Some entities at the heart of the government censorship enterprise can still organize to suppress speech. For instance, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, within the Department of Homeland Security, because, they come out with great, all of those lettered alphabet things that come out of the Department of Homeland Security, aren't they great? Anyway, I digress. CISA, within the Department of Homeland Security, can still work with academics to develop a hit list, for government censorship. And the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, Fauci's old organization, can still coordinate devastating takedowns of outside scientists critical of government policy. But the headline is a good one. The federal government can no longer threaten social media companies with destruction if they don't censor on behalf of the government. But that's okay. YouTube and people like that took up the torch, from the government, and they just do it themselves. The Biden administration, which has proven itself to be an enemy of free speech, will surely appeal this decision to the Supreme Court, but I am hopeful that we will win there, just as we have won in every venue in this litigation. I am grateful for the resilience of the U.S. Constitution, which has withstood this challenge. But I can never go back to the uncomplicated faith and naive confidence that I once had in America when I was young. Our government is not immune to the authoritarian impulse. I have learned the hard way that it is only we, the people, who must hold an overreaching government accountable for violating most sacred rights. Within our vigilance, we will lose them. Without our vigilance, Anyway, what a great article, right? Here, let me check in on the chat rooms here and see what's going on. And we will move to a new article if we have time. It looks like it's 12:25, about halftime. Sounds perfect. And this is what I want to get into right here. Neanderthal genes are linked to severe beep risk. I'm kind of scared to say that. But anyway, according to this is another mainstream Wall Street Journal. Neanderthal genes are linked to severe COVID risk. Study in Italy's worst pandemic hotspot sheds light on why some people fell seriously ill and others didn't. And this may even, if this turns out to be right, may even be connected to the why we are the last group of humans that occupy Earth right now. Something happened about 40,000 years ago that wiped out the Neanderthal. They just disappeared. Was it genes? Because it seems that Neanderthals' genes live on today in some Europeans, some 3 to 5% in some populations. Even Denisovan, another archaic human, seems to live on in the genetics of East Asians and others in the Pacific, with the 2 to 5% variants of Denisovan genes. And they weren't the only two. Even sub-Saharan Africans share 20% of their DNA with the ghost species, according to genetics. And they found other links in genetics that appear to indicate that there were 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7 different kinds of human beings living on the earth simultaneously at one time. So when you hear stories of the hobbits and the elves and the dwarves and all of this stuff, that may be just a reflection of the ancient world, of the ancient people that we now read about, and things like Gilgamesh, things like that, stories that talk about having friends out there, the Enkidu, that would be. Come back from halftime.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
Who owns you? If you're not in control, then someone else is. Join me, Ivy West, for Voices on the Wind, Saturday. I discuss government, health, metaphysics, suppressed science, universal mysteries, little-known incredible facts, alternative energies, and even more than you can imagine. Won't you join us on Revolution Radio Saturdays for Voices on the Wind with me, Ivy West.
There are lives in the balance, people under fire, children at the cannons.
Because if your head's in the sand, your tail is a target.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio!
The Secret Kindergarten is here for the young children of the world. The best program on the radio for kids, dealing with the most important topics in the whole universe. Fairy tales, music and movement, numbers, plants, animals, fun, colors, insects. Take care and cast your ears out to catch a story from the world of other young things. Reach out, up, under, and over. Sing a song. Talk about feelings. Just remember the magic word. The magic word is no. Step on into the Secret Kindergarten. Saturdays, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Right here on Revolution Radio.
Join me in the Brian Rouge Show on Revolution Radio, Eastern Standard Time, every Tuesday night from 6 to 8. We talk about the four most vital things, in my view, affecting all of humanity. Number one is UFOs and aliens and their agenda for the advancement of humanity. Number two is the Jewish establishment's control over all aspects of human civilization. Number three, the truth about Adolf Hitler, how he was the opposite of what we've been told. Number four is advanced ancient global civilizations. Join me on the Brian Rouge Show, Tuesday nights from 6 to 8 on Studio B on Revolution Radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
And welcome back to Revolutionary? Is it revolutionary? It is. It's Revolution Radio, where the truth never sleeps. or something like that. Let me go look, because I always mess that up. I'm the stuttering guest host, Ransom Godwin, filling in for Diamond and Leah, who are at the Crestone Energy Fair, the 34th annual one. I think he's going to be speaking there, so check his channel, and you'll probably get that speech, which, I was there for a couple of them. I've been to the event twice. All friendly people. What a great place. What a great experience to have for anybody that's looking to meet great people that are striving to make the world a better place. That's the 34th annual Crestone Energy Fair. And let's thank Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps and truth breaks the spell. There, that time I got it right. Let's check in on the chat and see what's going on over at Mountain High Time. That's my YouTube channel. So if you want to stop by there and say hello, you're welcome to. Great friendly chat in there. Anyway, let's get back to our show. So before the break, which, sorry about that, I'm used to the 2-hour segment, so I wasn't expecting a break in the middle of the hour, but here we are at the second half, and this is an article that I thought was pretty trippy because, as some of you probably listening to Diamond's channel, you've heard him talk about the event that happened about 40 to 42,000 years ago, where Neanderthal just disappeared. And there's been some papers out that may indicate that it was specifically genes that they didn't have that may be the reason that they disappeared. A smaller magnetic field, more cosmic rays, more solar particles coming in may have been too much for Neanderthal and other archaic humans to survive the changeover of whatever happened. However, like I said before, the genes of our distant cousins are not lost. They live today within us. And I know a lot of people get into the topics of race and, other things. It's kind of unnecessary once you understand that we are an admixture species, a species formed from several different human species, individual species that mated to create admixture hybrids, which we now call Homo sapiens sapiens. We have Cro-Magnon, which probably is the core species, considering that most of the genetics found on Earth today are from Cro-Magnon man. And that's disturbing in a lot of circles because the idea of out of Africa seems to be falling apart as we find apes in different areas of the world where, like Asia. Recently, they found some in Turkey. And the idea that there's only one cradle of civilization may be true, but the idea that man only came from one place may not be true. Indeed, man may have evolved separately in several distinct locations, creating different humans, our cousins, our brothers, whatever you want to call it. But we now know today that we are an admixture species of several different humans. And this article kind of goes into that same area of thinking. And the title is Neanderthal Genes Linked to Severe COVID Risk. Study in Italy's worst pandemic hotspot sheds light on why some people fell seriously ill and others didn't. I myself got COVID, but we didn't have any, none of my whole family had any respiratory problems. It was just a weird feeling of artificialness, I guess. A lot of body aches. It really felt like a big pile of poo for about 2 weeks. But we didn't get anything like other people got. A lot of people, they got the respiratory end of it, and they didn't make it, unfortunately. But anyway, here's this article here. Let's get into it. So Rome, the northern the northern Italian city of Bergamo, suffered one of the world's highest COVID-19 death rates, with army trucks deployed to carry the dead out of the overwhelmed town in the early days of the pandemic. A new study carried out by Bergamo, I think, now suggests that genes inherited from Neanderthals, extinct cousins of modern humans, could help explain why some people develop life-threatening forms of the disease while others didn't. A high number of infections in Bergamo provided scientists with data for the study. Through the research, I hate when they do this. This is the might, maybe, could be thing that I keep finding in science of today. I could might, maybe, and could be myself. I try not to. We kind of do that on Thursday nights, putting together different ideas that could or might happen or are likely to happen based on trends in the world on many Ice Age Conversations on Thursday night right here on Revolution Radio on Studio A. But whenever you hear scientists throw this out there, it kind of, in my opinion, kind of means that their stuff means diddly squat. But anyway, we'll take it at face value here. Though the research doesn't address why so many people died, which is the topic of the damn article we're reading. Anyway, it doesn't address why so many people died. They're compared with other parts of Italy or Europe. Early on in the pandemic, it became clear that many risk factors were at play. First among them, advanced age. Scientists also suspected that genes could leave some people more vulnerable to severe COVID than others. Family members often developed a similar form of the disease, kind of like what I just said a minute ago, suggesting a degree of genetic predisposition. Scientists at the Mario Negri Institute for Pharmacological Research, pharmacological. Hold on. Let me take some more stutter medication because I'm sorry about that, but so much LSD and stuff back in the day, I kind of got slight brain damage when it comes to speaking at times. But I found something that helps me out with that, so we'll just try to start this again. Pharmacological research in Milan spent the past few years analyzing possible links between DNA variations and COVID-19. The study, published in the Journal of iScience and based on a sample of nearly 10,000 people in the Bergamo area, identified several genes associated with the development of severe respiratory illness. 3 of those genes belong to a group of variations in DNA or haplotype inherited from Neanderthals. The Italian study found that people who carried the Neanderthal haplotype were twice as likely to develop severe pneumonia from a COVID infection than those who didn't, and 3 times likely to be hospitalized in intensive care units and put on ventilators. I have some stuff to say about that, but I just can't say it on YouTube. Anyway, unknown is whether the haplotype is more common in the Bergamo region than in other Italian or European regions. Epidemiologists still don't know why parts of northern Italy suffered such high death tolls, especially early in the pandemic. Scientists have suggested factors could have included age, air pollution, and that the virus hit the region early in the pandemic and spread undetected. A physician I'm trying to read the picture there. Anyway, this study shows that there is particularly a section of the human genome that is significantly associated with the risk of getting the dreaded vid and of developing a severe form of it, says Giuseppe Remuzzi. Sorry about that. And, Diamond is, he's a little Italian. He might get mad at me for messing up all these names. Anyway, an infectious disease expert and director at the Mario Negri Institute, who oversaw the research, that section is more important than any others to explain why some fall seriously ill. In Bergamo, 33% of those who developed life-threatening forms of COVID had the Neanderthal haplotype. The haplotype was less present in people who developed mild or no symptoms from COVID infection. About 2% of the genomes of people of European or Asian origin is inherited from Neanderthals and has been linked to modern humans, as I was talking about that before. The Italian researchers added that a growing body of evidence suggesting that the cluster of Neanderthal genes increases the likelihood of developing severe forms of the dreaded vid. A study published in the Journal of Nature in September 2020 first suggested that genomic segments associated with more severe dreaded vid derived from Neanderthals, which interbred at various points with Homo sapiens before going extinct about 40,000 years ago. The Nature study, co-written by the Swedish scientist Svante Pääbo, a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize in Physiology or Medicine, found found the Neanderthal genomic segments is carried by around 16% of Europeans and 50% of people of South Asia, parts of which also had high death tolls from the dreaded vid. the Neanderthal haplo is almost completely absent from Africa. That's a fact that I said before. And let's just stop for a minute. This fact alone discredits the out of Africa theory. And the reason it discredits it because if humans were leaving Africa, that's right, the core species of Cro-Magnon or Homo sapien, whatever you want to call it, came out of Africa, you would expect that when they mixed with Neanderthal and they went back and forth, that they would carry those genes. And instead of seeing that, what we see is sub-Saharan Africans don't have any of the Neanderthal haplotype. I think it's less than 1%, if I'm not mistaken, that I've read from other things talking about this subject, which means that a group of humans did indeed go back into Africa and spread a small amount of Neanderthal DNA. And those humans were already mixed with Neanderthal, which, kind of convolutes the whole theory of leaving Africa and more points to the fact that maybe humans developed independently in multiple places at once. And that's why we have multiple types of human beings living on the planet. And, all of this stuff puts to shame the whole idea that races and other things are based on skin tone. Skin tone really has nothing to do with it. It's just a long string of humans bumping and grinding that came out with our new Homo sapiens sapien. Anyway, the Neanderthal haplotype is almost completely absent from Africa because in Africa, their main core species would have been Cro-Magnon with 20% of a mystery species that geneticists call a ghost species. And you could take that as you will. The fact, along with the factors such as young populations, could help explain why deaths and severe forms of the disease appeared to be less common in much of Africa than some other world regions with better healthcare systems, scientists say. Genetics matters in other ways. You're not allowed to say genetics matter in lots of ways, but when we're talking about sickness, evidently you can. Genetic matters in other ways. Another study published in Nature in July showed that DNA variations that affect the immune system can increase a person's odds of avoiding the dreaded vid symptoms altogether. There are just so many factors, says Marco Cattaneo, the editor of the Italian edition of Scientific America in the Gargano region. Measures to stop the virus from spreading is what would have made the real difference. What's really bizarre of this, I kind of am thinking about the Basque region in Spain, because whenever, they did genetic testing to them, they seem to have no Neanderthal DNA, meaning that they're just regular Cro-Magnon people from 40,000 years ago, no difference, no change. They're just sitting there. And matter of fact, their language doesn't match up to any of the other sources from the Aryan Indian, or how do you say that? Aryan Indus Valley. The languages that came out from the Aryan languages, which most languages that we speak in Europe and Asia came from those, except for like the Chinese language and other languages of East Asia. But as far as India, the subcontinent, and Europe and Eurasia, almost all the languages have their traces back to that time period. And so it makes you wonder, like, where did Cro-Magnon man show up in the first place? What kind of cataclysm made him start moving around and, mixing with other humans that they found when they came? Interesting fact about the Basque in Spain is that they claim to have come from Atlantis. And they're not the only ones. Actually, there's the Berber people living in North Africa that many thought were distant relatives of Europeans that just moved into North Africa. But genetic tests say they are indigenous people to North Africa. And then you have the Guanche of the Canary Islands, who were this 6 foot tall, 7 foot tall, redheaded, white looking people with gray eyes, blue eyes, according to the Spanish. They no longer are around today because the Spanish conquered and killed them, but they were building pyramids. They were doing their thing for God knows how long out there, segregated from all of the other humans. And scientists say they are a direct descendant from Cro-Magnon. So you have 3 different spots where people are not mixed with Neanderthal or other things. And so this idea comes into a real way whenever you're talking about genetics. Does your ancestry make you susceptible to certain diseases? Well, we know like a lot of the world is lactose intolerant, and they just don't, they don't deal with the milks and the cheeses. And that's probably most likely just from genetics and lineage, where some people that came from areas where they did not have thousands of years using dairy cows and eating cheese and drinking milk, well, they just, they can't pass it through their system that great. Meanwhile, other people that have a long history, like Nordic people, most of them are all lactose tolerant. So it really does make you wonder when these guys are tinkering around with genetics, which genetics do they target? Which genetics do they study? Because it does, they don't really share those type of informations with you. Anyway, let's get back to the article. Bergamo was an early epicenter of the pandemic. Why the disease killed so many people so quickly in that area has lingered as a medical mystery. The coronavirus spread undetected for a long time before it was first confirmed in Italy in February 2020. Let's see here. Individuals included in this study reported the symptoms in late 2019, meaning that it was already rolling around a year before. But let's not say nothing about that. Anyway, the first lockdown in Bergamo and surrounding areas took place in early March, by which time the virus had reached countless homes, hospitals, and old people's homes. Italy has one of the oldest populations in the world. Maybe that's why they're taking all those migrants now. I don't know. Anyway, that was a pretty good article, even though it didn't really get in depth into the genetics, so to speak, too much. It does point out that, we're all a hybrid species in here, and we're all at risk or have benefit of our ancestry's genes. But something happened 40,000 years ago, and it seems like genes that made it through had something in it, obviously, that the other archaic humans did not have. And thank God for that, or none of us would be here talking to each other, and none of the different kinds of people around the world would exist. And think about that, really. Instead of being lost to time, other archaic humans like Neanderthal, Denisovan, and others mixed with us, and we are a new species because of it. And that's who we are today. And I know a lot of people don't like that idea, but that's what genetics are telling us. We are an admixture, hybrid species, and who knows what's going forward. So let's talk about, in the last 5 minutes, the next mega disaster that could happen at any moment and kill us all. And we'll try to jump down it real fast. Stuff to worry about that you shouldn't worry about. But if it happens, you won't have time to worry about it, so don't worry about it. Yellowstone National Park sits quietly on top of a super volcano that's 44 miles wide. And, they try to scare everybody with that one all the time. But don't worry about if that thing went off and you live in Wyoming or the surrounding area. You're not going to have much time to think about it. The Lake Tuba supervolcano on the Indonesian island of Sumatra. Now, this one could put Earth into an ice age for a long, long time. So would the one at Yellowstone. And if you ever notice, all of these ideas have nothing to do with humans. We don't cause hurricanes. We don't make hurricanes worse. They wish they could. They're trying to do it, but I don't think they can. The Earth is just too big. It's too powerful. The sun drives climate, and nature is very powerful. A lot of people are worried about the big one in California and Oregon and Washington. There's also the Chilean megathrust. And just as I pointed out, look at all of these. These are all earthquake, volcano-related, Caribbean tsunamis, major solar storms. Why should we worry about that? Because they told us the sun has absolutely nothing to do with weather on Earth. But freakily, it seems to really mess with Earth when it burps at us. I think we had a nice little burp off the sun this morning, and we're all waiting for the big one. And if any of you guys have seen that cartoon show, it's kind of like Rick and Morty. I forgot what it's called, but they start off every show, and then the asteroid hit, because that's why they left their planet. And me, myself, I think that's the greatest threat to humankind today is a rock just flying into the Earth from somewhere, something that we didn't see coming. And every time you see these bodies fly by the Earth, they usually tell you the next couple of days, hey, well, this giant asteroid just flew by the Earth. We didn't notice it till it was on its way out, but don't worry about it. Just give us money and we'll protect you. In 2012, Earth narrowly missed being hit by a massive solar storm, the most powerful in over 150 years. The last major incident was in 1859, which created intense geomagnetic storms and caused global telegraph lines to spark, setting them on fire. Offices and homes were burned up. The Victorian internet, so to speak, was destroyed. If you imagine something like that happening today, God forbid you live in a trailer home, you should have a big fuse outside of your house in case, there's any blast from the electrical outlet into your home causing fires. You think maybe those people in Lahaina maybe wish that they had a little switch that they could turn off the electricity like the government turned off their water? Oh, oops, they didn't mean to do that. They didn't sound the alarm because those were for tsunamis, allegedly. But then when you go look up what they were made for, it said forest fires, any kind of emergency. But if one thing you could take from the small disaster, not a cosmic disaster, but a localized disaster in any place on the world, one thing that you noticed is government cannot and sometimes will not help you. So saving yourself is up to you. Being prepared is up to you. No one's going to come save you. There's no white hats going to fix the government for you. That's not going to happen. It's going to happen from the populace, from the ground up. When you're tired of being under tyranny, you're tired of being ruled and regulated, that's when it'll stop, and not a minute before that. So stop waiting for the white hats. They're not going to save you. You can save yourself. You can save your family. And the people in Hawaii found that out when the people that disregarded the roadblocks and totally ignored government and didn't listen to them, guess what? They survived. They survived, and you can survive too. If you prep, use critical thinking, deductive logic on what could or might be. What are the odds in your area? Are you susceptible to earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, etc.? Are you susceptible to government and political and public dangers, meaning that when things go into turmoil from one of those other events, hey, it could be the dollar that collapses. You never know what the event is going to be. It could be just that, a cosmic catastrophe where the earth is just sitting here minding our own business and the sun burps out something that will knock us back all the way to a similar time as the Stone Age. And that's very possible, and it's likely. So you don't have to worry about, the earth burning up or any of these other things they tell you about. The sun's going to get too big in millions of years. Guess what? You're not going to be alive then. And by then, human beings, if still there, will be trying to figure out what to do then. And if they're prepared, they'll survive, just like you will. And we're wrapping up the hour here. And I've been your guest host, Ransom Godwin, filling in for Diamond and Leah from the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, Magnetic Reversal News, and Shinrin Yoku on YouTube. And don't forget to tune in every Saturday at noon Mountain High Time to catch their show right here on Revolution Radio, where the internet never sleeps. See, I can't ever remember that thing, man. They got a really good thing, but I always mess it up. Here, let's go look again so I don't mess it up. Here it is, where information never sleeps and the truth breaks the spell. And I hope your spell got broken. I hope it got broken sometime in the past 2 years, if you didn't already. Figure it out that you are the only one looking out for you. You're the only one looking out for your family. Until we come together as a civilization that looks out for each other, you're on your own. So prep, think about it, be prepared, and don't be a victim of natural disasters. Don't be a victim to yourself, and don't be a victim to the government. Doot, doot, doot. And here comes the radio. The radio sounds. Thanks for watching. You can catch me on Mountain High Time, and don't forget to check out Diamond and the Crestone Energy Fair.